It's okay though.
Messed it up already?
I didn't. Hi! Nobody's here yet, but we can talk. Anyway, we thought since Nighthawk is live in the holler for the live show, we'd do a live interview show today. So happy Friday, everybody. I am going to move YouTube to my computer and get going. See, we have somebody on. Tell us hello, somebody. So because interview shows have like pre-recorded and then the interview and then post-production, what I'm going to do today is just introduce Nighthawk in Pennsylvania. He doesn't know anything. So we're going to do an interview on heating with fire. And heating with fire is something that works really well if you're trying to conserve your outlay of money, as long as you can get a source of firewood. And for me, it's the warmest heat I've ever had. So we're going to do that. I'm going to just get this thing rolling, and then I'm going to say welcome to the show.
All right.
And then you're going to tell us who you are. But I'm going to tell you to tell us who you are, so wait for me to do that.
All right.
Okay, you've done this before. You're a pro. Let's go.
Once or twice.
And if there's questions from the live chat, I'll interject them. So welcome to the show, Nighthawk.
It's great to be here, Nicole.
I'm glad to have you on. So for those of the listeners who don't really know who Nighthawk is, and I talk about you all the time because you live next door to me, tell us, who is Nighthawk and how did you go from, doing fire alarm installations in Pennsylvania to talking to us today about firewood?
I have about 8 years experience doing fire alarm maintenance and inspections when I lived up in Pennsylvania. And then at that point I was going, well, I want to move.
Moving!
I don't know where I want to move. I just want to move somewhere. So I actually spent about 6 months deciding where I wanted to move to. One of the things I did, I didn't know exactly where I want to move, so I ruled out states that I didn't want to live in.
Like what?
California, New Jersey, New York.
Pennsylvania,
because I was already there.
Yeah.
So I ruled those out.
Okay.
And then I went through, it's like, well, and I narrowed it down to either Tennessee or New Hampshire. Because they both have very similar climates.
Now he's just going to move back and forth for the next 10 years, making up his mind, right?
Maybe. And we were talking on Zello, and one of our friends down here, AutoFab, decided to do a memorial pig roast. So me and my friend PA Prepper up on Zello, I think he's been on the show too. We decided to come down for that. We came down. We actually ended up staying for a week, couple days down there. We came back to the holler, stayed another, I think 4 or 5 days here before we left. And okay, I'm kind of sold now.
Yeah, you decided to move at that point. And he decided to move despite the fact he spent like 4 days working on the roasting camper.
Yes, which we get to work on roasting camper again. Okay.
So you ended up to move down. How long did it take you to move after you decided to move to Tennessee?
It took me, I think I waited another 4 months or something like that. I just had some extenuating circumstances up there I wanted to hang around with, but I got that all straightened out. Moved down, bummed around here for a couple months till I found a job.
Found a job, worked the job, quit the job. Now what are you doing?
Yeah. And now I had a brilliant idea. End of February, I'll quit my job. And
he quit his job at the end of February, and then March happened.
Start my own handyman business.
Yeah.
And then the zombie apocalypse came.
Yeah.
So kind of sat around, did nothing for a couple months, and slowly starting to build it back up now.
Yeah, you're getting jobs now, right?
I am starting
to get jobs. What do you specialize in?
I'm specializing in deck maintenance and window cleaning.
So this is great, guys. We live near a lake with big, tall vacation home A-frame things with like tall windows. He knows how to do that. So I think as we get into spring next year, you're going to see a lot of window washing gigs. You do have one you need to do though, right?
Yes, I do.
When are you doing that one?
Probably start working on that next week.
Oh, next week. He's waiting for me to leave town to wash the windows at the place. Okay. So, Nighthawk, we brought you on today to talk about heating because one of the things about developing self-reliance is being able to take care of yourself if like the power goes out, right? And when you live in the country and the power goes out, sometimes it's out for a really long time. So I know we've made the decision here to heat with wood. What are the different ways to heat, though?
All right. The three main ways to heat is with wood, gas or oil, or electric.
Okay.
Down here in Tennessee, I realized that most people don't use oil heat. Like that was very common up around Pennsylvania, up in New England states.
Oil deliveries aren't really a thing here.
Yeah. And electric, a lot of people use electric. Electric gets real expensive real quick.
So my neighbor down the road she moved from, I think, propane and wood to an electric heat pump.
Okay.
And her bills went to $400 a month in the winter.
Yep.
And she was shocked. Yeah. So electricity is relatively cheap here in theory because we're like TVA land with dams and rivers. But electrical heat in poorly insulated homes, well, it's expensive. It gets expensive quickly. And that's one of the reasons we didn't put an electric heat pump in here. I was already in Nashville. I was spending $200 a month in the winter just to do electric heat. So
it gets real expensive real quick. It takes a lot of energy to use electric to heat up.
Yeah. So then there's wood heat.
And then there's wood heat. That is my preferred choice.
Why?
I like the heat better. It's very cost effective to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And since I usually cuddle my wood and split it myself, I'm not paying somebody for it.
Okay. So what he's saying is he's cheap.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so if I'm thinking about getting wood heat, because I know I made this decision years ago, and I'll explain why later, but what should you think about before you say, yes, I'm doing wood heat?
Okay. You want to line up how you're going to get the heat, where you're going to, if it's brand new, where you're going to, the placement of the wood stove is going to be a big deal, because whatever room you place the wood stove in, that's going to be your warmest room.
Okay.
And then you have to come up with a way to move the heat throughout the house.
Okay.
Because there's no point in having, well, the living room where the wood stove is at 90 degrees, and your back bedroom where you want to be a little warm is at 40. You might not like that.
Right. Yeah. So the way wood heat works is where the stove is warmer, and as you get further, it's cooler. And so if you don't move air, then it's kind of a problem. You know, they make wood burning furnaces though, too.
They do.
Yeah. I had one at a house I was going to refurbish and move into that I changed my mind about. And it had big old ducts. So it went through the ducts, and you had this one room not in the center of the house where you would build the fire, and then you circulated the air. What do you think about that idea?
Those work. I haven't had a whole lot of experience. I have looked at them.
Mm-hmm.
That's one kind.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another kind, an outdoor wood boiler.
Yeah.
Where essentially it's a giant firebox outside, and it heats water, and then the water runs through underground to the house, and it runs through basically water baseboard.
You know that's what was originally here.
Really?
Yeah. So originally this had a wood burning boiler that got eventually changed into a propane boiler coming from a water heater, and it had a big old storage tank, and it circulated pipes under the house that heated the floor.
Okay.
And the problem with it was that it used so much wood that it wasn't really feasible. And so the guy who built the house, Mr. Cruz, changed from wood burning boiler to the propane. And then somewhere along the lines, the pipes under the floors broke. And you can see in the living room, there was a bit of a repair. We think that's why there's like this square cut in the floor.
Well, I wondered about
not where I have the patch of the subfloor, but where the actual wood flooring is. And then by the time that Mr. Cruz died and the next person took over, there was also a propane heating and a cooling system that was all in the prepper pantry. So when I moved in, that prepper pantry, you couldn't walk into it because there was a boiler system and a generator and a water heater and a wood burning water heater and all this stuff. And then that's why there's that you've seen the planked over trench in there.
Yeah.
That was where the water went in to go under the house.
Okay.
So that was originally what we had here. However, when I moved in, we had nothing. We had another HVAC unit that had been put on the house, and they had cut through the cinder block in the front of the house, and it had that round ductwork on the outside of the house like an octopus. And originally this house had a greenhouse on the south side, and they had taken the greenhouse down, so there was broken glass everywhere and cinder block walls sticking out, and then octopus arms for the heat. And at the time I was kind of dumb and didn't realize I probably could have salvaged that HVAC unit. I just hadn't really learned enough about it, and so I gave it away to the contractor, who probably either used it or sold it for copper scrap, whatever. I mean, he did a lot of work here. I don't feel bad about that at all. But yeah, that's what we had. And so when we went into our first fall and it started getting cold, guess what we heated with?
What?
Kerosene.
Kerosene.
So we found this kerosene heater in the workshop, and we would drive out on the weekends, and it'd be like below 30 in here. Okay. And we would put the kerosene heater in the middle of the living room under the ceiling fan and turn it on, and it would slowly rise. And then we had to think, like, do we want to spend $5,000 on an HVAC unit? And guess what the answer was? No. So we put a wood stove in, and in hindsight, especially now that I've taken that wall out, I would have put it somewhere else. But it's okay where it is.
Oh, good. We don't have to move it.
We don't. Well, if we ever do the big remodel, we're doing a totally different kind of stove, and that's a different story. We're not going there yet. So before you move, you should consider where it goes. What else should you think about?
What was the question again?
What should you think about in addition to where the stove goes before you do wood heat?
Your access to firewood.
Access to firewood.
How are you going to get the firewood? Is it something you're going to go out harvest yourself, or are you going to pay somebody to harvest it for you?
Yeah, the finances are different if you're buying firewood. I'm about to buy firewood this week, probably.
Oh, this week?
Yeah. Okay. Before it's gone, because now it's getting cold and it will be gone, and then we will just have crappy firewood if I go buy firewood in 2 weeks. So I'm pretty sure I'm taking a weekend trip to Smithville, Tennessee. Right. Yeah. What about air quality? If you're asthmatic, should you be heating with wood?
It depends.
What's it depend on?
Depends on how bad your asthma is. Can you handle it or not? I mean, I have asthma. I don't have a problem with it. Yeah. It also depends on the stove.
Some stoves, like, smoke comes out. And mine is one that smoke will come out if the draw is not right. Yes. And that happens in my stove 2 or 3 times a year, that I'm like, crap, now there's smoke in my living room. So if you're asthmatic and that's going to trigger you, you need to be careful. Yeah. Or you can also install, I've heard you can install fans to help with the draw in the pipe of the stove. Have you heard about that?
I don't know if I heard about that.
Yeah, you're about to hear about that in a big way for a coffee roasting hood.
Oh, okay.
We're basically about to do that for my new roaster. So my neighbor who put in that electric, that's why she did, is it was triggering her asthma. Yeah. And she had to stop. So you do need to think about air quality when you're heating with wood, because if you're very sensitive, it is putting particles into the air. And in that case, you may want to think, if you're going to go with wood, you may want to think about having the furnace in a different place or outside and circulating just the air, not the smoky air.
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I know I've talked to some people who asthma was bad enough that they couldn't run a wood stove because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a couple of people.
And there are ways to minimize it. Again, a lot of it depends on the stove itself. Yeah. And just your experience running it.
Yeah, the better you are at lighting the right kind of fire, the less pollution you get in the air.
And every stove is a little different with what it likes, with adjusting the vents and the draws and the damper.
Yeah. Okay, so if I have a wood stove, then I've made the decision to put wood heat in. I have the wood stove. What do I need to do every year to keep it maintained?
You want to clean the chimney out at least once a year minimum.
Yeah, we did mine twice last year, right?
If you're using it as your sole source of heat, so you're burning in it every day, you're probably going to want to clean that out a couple times a year.
If you're burning really yucky stuff and it's putting a lot of creosote in, you're going to need to do it once a month.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a little careful about the wood that goes in mine.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it comes down to the type of wood you use.
Mm-hmm.
Your carnivorous trees like pine, you're going to put more creosote in there, so it's going to have to be cleaned out more often.
Yeah.
If it's, as long as you're comfortable getting up there, usually you got to get up on the roof and clean it out yourself. It's not a hard job.
Yeah.
You just have to be comfortable working on the roof.
There's no problem at my house, guys, because my roof is like 4 feet off the ground, right?
About 5 in the back.
Yeah.
So it would hurt a little bit when you slide off.
Yeah, well, it's actually the heads of the roof screws ripping into your skin on the way down.
Yeah.
That's the painful part, I'm pretty sure.
But it will slow you down.
Okay, what about like checking the gaskets and stuff like that? What else do you need to do?
Yeah, you want to check the gaskets. An easy way to do that is if you take a dollar bill, open up the door, put the dollar bill in, close the door. If you can move it, you want to replace your gasket.
Apparently he's not lighting the dollar bill on fire. That's good.
Yeah, you want to do this with the stove off and just do it all the way around the door.
Yeah.
Also make sure that your fire brick inside isn't cracked, broken, in pieces.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, I got to replace my fire brick.
Yeah, fire brick. It's on sale at or it's for sale at, like, not on reduced price sale at Tractor Supply right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they have them tall enough for what I need.
That's okay. You can go to Fireplaces and More in Cookeville.
Mm-hmm. Or I can order them off Amazon.
Yeah, are my fire bricks big enough? Don't I have some left? Or no?
I'll have to look. I don't think so.
Okay. So you got to check your fire brick. You got to check the seals on it. You got to clean the chimney. If you have one that's made out of cast iron, this is a good time to polish it all. And then the first fire you have in it will create smoke in your house from the polish, but then you can kind of get the rust off. If you leave the rust on, it degrades over time,
yes.
Right?
Yeah. And then you start burning holes in it, and then it's not going to work.
So what do you do if some of the seams of your cast iron stove are no longer sealing and smoke's coming up? Because that happens on boxwood stoves.
That's a good question. At that point, either find somebody who knows how to weld cast iron, or replace it.
Well, there's also a product that's like cast iron caulking. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, sorry, I had a boxwood stove for many years, so you haven't had. It was a cheap little thing. I kept that thing going for 10 years, by the way.
Impressive.
Yeah, it used a lot of wood. That's the other thing is when you choose your wood stove, what should you choose? Because the boxwood stove is like $200, but it's either all in or it's not on.
Yeah.
And that means that you just blow through the wood.
Yeah, so you're going to use a lot more wood in that. But one of the benefits is over that stove versus newer EPA stoves, like you have the soapstone that suck up heat and then radiate it out slowly.
Yeah.
Is the box stone is more forgiving in moisture content
of the wood itself. Yeah.
Whereas like new EPA stoves, they want they're expecting things like 20% or less.
Yep.
Or else they just sit there and smolder and fight you the entire time.
Yep. Ask me how I know.
You've done it already.
Yeah.
I've seen you do it.
That's why I'm buying firewood this week.
I mean, I have an older, more along the lines of a box stove, and it really doesn't care what I put in there, how wet the wood is or not.
But your stove goes through less wood than a boxwood stove, though, right?
Probably.
Okay.
But the other thing, too, is I also am not too concerned about heat, whereas Nicole likes her house 70-ish.
76 is fine. 78 is fine.
I'm sitting there
74 is fine. He wears shorts here in the winter.
Yeah. I'm sitting there going in my house, it's 54. All right, we're good. So I keep my house a lot colder.
No.
It doesn't bother me too much. If I get cold, I just put a sweatshirt on or put some thermals on and I'm comfortable.
Yeah, and the cool thing about a modern stove they're designed to burn as much of the wood as possible so that it's not going out into the air. That's why he calls it an EPA stove. And mine's soapstone, so it has stones that are about 3 inches thick all the way around it, soapstone. And when you light a fire, that heats before your house. So it's slow to heat your house if your house is cold. But then once they're heated up, they radiate heat for 6 to 8 hours in my particular stove. So if the fire goes out in the middle of the night, it's still, it's not as warm as if there's a fire in there, but it's still basically warm when I get up in the morning.
Yeah.
And so you don't have that like under the blanket, put your finger out and go, nope, nope. And then you get back in bed and you stay in bed too long. So that's the nice thing about the soapstone.
Yeah. So there are trade-offs.
Yeah.
It all depends on what you want. If you want to use less wood, the newer stoves are your way to go. You just have to take a little more.
I use 25% of the wood I used in the boxwood stove with this.
You just have to take more effort into procuring, storing your firewood.
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah. And then like if I had a rocket mass heater, it would probably be 1/10 of what I'm using now.
Probably.
And that's something I may think about if we do a big remodel here is, and the only problem with that in Tennessee is our weather is so weird that we'll have, like next week, we're going to have 3 cold days and then it'll probably be 80 degrees again. Because we're still in this, we bump up and down. And if I have just gotten a rocket mass heater going and everything's nice and heated up for the next 3 days, because that's how rocket mass heaters work, and then it's 80 degrees, it's going to be uncomfortable.
You're going to have to turn the AC back on.
You have to turn the AC on to cool down my rocket mass heater. And this is not an efficient use of energy, guys. Right?
One thing with the rocket mass heaters is they get heavy quick.
Yeah.
So you have to be
reinforced floor.
Yeah, a little selective of where you put it in the house.
Yeah. Put a bunch of stone in and rock and whatever you fill that thing with. Yeah, mine's on a cement pad in the pump house. So, okay, so you've decided to put a stove in. You've figured out what kind of stove you want, whether it's a more basic sort of barrel stove or a boxwood stove or the kind of stove you have, which is really ugly and square, but it's a little nicer as far as efficiency, or a higher efficiency stove that's either like a Hearthstone or a Vermont cast iron. If you get a cast iron stove instead of a soapstone stove, what happens is the cast iron heats up faster, but does not radiate as long, but it still radiates some.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
get that in. So where do I get firewood? I know where I get firewood, but if I was new to the area, how would I figure that out?
Ask your neighbors.
Okay.
And it also depends on what land you live on too. She has 3 acres here. There are some trees out there we can cut down and harvest.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of postings on Craigslist, free firewood, where people just want the trees gone. Unfortunately, in my area, most of them are an hour away. Yeah, and by the time you're an hour away, what you're risking doing if you go get that firewood is infecting your forest with somebody else's forest pests. So it's better to keep it closer to local than to go 60 miles, unless you know how to properly kiln and treat that, which I do not have that capability here. I don't either. Yeah. I find there's a lot of people who have trees down in their yards nearby that if you ask them, they'll let you cut it up. Yeah. It's solving a problem for them. Yep. Yeah. And it's a great way to do that. Also, keep your eyes out. If you see any tree service in your neighborhood. Yep. I know up in Pennsylvania, we got 2 to 3 years worth of firewood. The one time our neighbor back behind us was taking down 2 or 3 trees, and tree guys were like, "You want this wood?" Sure. So they loaded it in the truck, brought it over, dumped it where we wanted it. Yeah. Didn't even have to haul it across the yard. Nice. It was nice. Nice. Yeah, and that happens in the city too. When I was in Nashville, limbs and trees fall down all the time because in the South we just have a lot of trees here, and they grow fast. And so somebody would have a tree over and they would log it up and put it by the road because they didn't have a wood stove. And so and then you knock on their door and say, "Hey, can I have that?" They'll just give it to you. It's really easy to find free wood. The downside of that is it takes a lot of time. Yes. So where do you buy wood? Just about every place has a couple of firewood sellers. Down here, driving into Smithville, there's a guy that has a stand. there's other. He's probably not the only one around here.
Yeah, if you look on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, people start saying, here it's ricks of wood and not cords of wood.
Yeah.
A rick of wood here is, what is it, 10 feet?
8 foot.
Oh, 8 foot by 18 inches.
Roughly.
And 3 of those make a cord. Other places, it's 8 foot by 12 inches, and 4 of those make a cord. A cord, it's like a volume measurement, so it's 8 feet by 4 feet by 8 feet or by 6 feet.
I think 4 foot for a cord.
Yeah, so 4 by 4 by 8.
Yeah.
Okay, see, I get this all messed up. And so when you start talking about volumes of wood, it gets really confusing really fast. And then in different regions, you have this thing called a rick, which is less than a cord, that can mean something different. So you really want to know what you're buying before you buy it. And then after one season, you'll know how much you use, right? So
yes.
I like to have 2 to 3 cords of wood going into the winter, even though I didn't use that last year, did I?
I think so.
I used about a cord of wood last year, and it was not a very cold winter.
That's true.
I would have used 2 to 3 times that amount. So 3 cords is what I like to have going into winter. And then it seems like during the winter, my neighbors show up with wood.
I don't know who that is.
It's a good thing they like cutting wood, because I would just be buying it all. And that's the other thing, is you have to figure out how that works in your lifestyle, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if I decide I want to cut wood, are you going to let me?
Maybe.
Maybe. How do I do it safely? Nobody lets me cut firewood. They let me bring it inside.
If you want to do it old school, I can give you an axe.
Yeah.
And you can chop the tree down and chop it
Like,
up.
so chop at the tree?
Yep.
Okay. I'd be bored before I finished.
Yeah. That's a lot of effort.
Yeah.
I like to use a chainsaw.
Oh, yeah. Chainsaw seems like a good. That's why nobody wants to be cutting wood, is they're afraid if they give me a chainsaw, I'll cut them. Right?
No, I'll be far away.
Okay. So how do you use a chainsaw without cutting your leg or your head off?
Very carefully.
Okay. Good.
Now, yeah, with that.
So you have to remember, when the chain's moving, don't touch it.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
If you haven't used one before, find somebody who has.
Okay.
To show you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get into that just because if you haven't used one, they can be very dangerous real quick.
I think it's the most dangerous saw to use, pretty much.
It's definitely up there.
Yeah, skill saws are also kind of.
They can be.
Because they keep spinning after you're
Yeah.
done, and then you touch your leg with it, and your
Yep.
leg hurts. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, running a chainsaw, you're going to want to wear some ear protection.
Yeah.
Eye protection. One thing I'm looking at is I'm actually looking at getting some chainsaw traps to help protect the legs in
Yep.
case it slips.
Yep. Yeah, so when you're using a chainsaw, holding it up over your head like this is a bad idea.
That's probably usually a bad idea.
Because when the chain is going through wood, if it hits a knot or something, it could bounce back. If it's over your head, it bounces back into your head. And the reason you're thinking about chaps is when it bounces back down low, is it can bounce back into your shin.
Correct.
And a lot of people I know do wear chainsaw guards on their shins for that reason.
And most of the cutting you're going to be doing when you're bucking up the firewood, which is cutting it into the
logs,
logs or the rounds before you split, is going to be down low.
Yeah. So you have to think about where the chainsaw could bounce back and avoid having body parts there.
Yep.
And if there's a risk of having body parts there, have something protecting the body part. Is that in summary?
In summary.
And then practice. I think you practice on smaller trees first until you get proficient with the saw. Like you buck up little ones.
I would actually recommend bucking up first starting out like 12-inch round trees.
Okay. I started on little cedars.
Well, it also depends on the size of the saw too.
Yeah.
That's a good 12 inches. That's a good size where you're not going to get through it too fast. There's enough mass in there that it's going to stop you from doing something real stupid. Say if you're just trying to do like this 4-inch thing here, you're not going to be tempted to pull it with one hand and run the saw with the other hand.
Right.
You're not going to do that.
Oh, don't ever do that.
Yeah, don't ever do that.
2 hands on the saw.
No.
Okay. So you have it bucked up. what about like what's the male perspective on how to split firewood without a wood splitter?
Without a wood
Like with
splitter,
an axe. Do you have any advice on that?
get yourself a good splitting axe. They're usually 6 to 8 pounds and real heavy heads for it. I've done it like that.
Yeah.
Definitely do not like doing it like that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it works best if you can hit in a straight line in the same spot every time.
Yeah.
And my aim is a little off.
When you chop, do you exert downward force?
I've heard it both ways, where you want to put downward force in, and also heard it other ways where it's just let it fall and let the axe do all the work.
Which way do you do?
Little bit of the downward force.
Okay. So almost every man I talk to exerts downward force when they chop. When I chop, I get a slightly heavier axe, which I don't know where it is right now. And my effort is in the lifting, and then I let it drop and try to guide it to the same place. And I let the force of it happen.
Yep.
I don't do this thing where I go behind my back and swing, which I know guys who do that, and they do a great job chopping that way. I don't have it in me.
Yeah.
So like my girl perspective is just let it use its own force. My other girl perspective is buy a firewood splitter.
Yes.
Yeah. Those are great.
Yeah, the one other way you can do it by hand is with the sledgehammer and splitting wedges.
Okay, so Lisa Davis wants to know, what is a good chainsaw for a woman to cut down smaller trees when it's, and okay, if not super strong, like not strong muscles or mechanically inclined. Electric is out because I need to free range 18.5 acres. So do you have any advice for the kind of chainsaw that somebody could use?
If you're looking for a gas chainsaw, they do make small gas ones. I know Steel's a good brand. Husqvarna's a good brand. Even Echo's a pretty good brand.
You know, the other thing is battery operated ones.
Yep,
I would think about
there.
like who makes one? Is it Oregon?
Oregon makes one.
Yeah.
Steel makes one.
Yeah.
Milwaukee makes one. DeWalt makes one.
I don't have one, so I don't know how well they work, Lisa. But I do know I had a little Steel that was about this big when I moved here, and that thing worked great on little trees. For me.
I know my brother has a Milwaukee cordless one. My dad liked this so much he just got one. Yeah.
And I would say go to the store if you're going to go battery operated and lift it up and think, can I hold this with my forearms? Because the forearms are what get tired when you have a tool like that.
Now, the only other thing to keep in mind with the electric and the cordless one is if you have the intention of wearing the chacks to protect your legs while using it, it won't work. Because it has something to do with the torque in them, where it like overrides it. I'm not sure. That's just what I read.
Overrides what?
The way the material in the chaps is supposed to stop the chain from moving.
Okay, so
aren't rated for the.
What he's saying is get a suit of armor if you want to protect your shins. And I don't know. We'll look that up. We'll find a little bit more information about that. That the chaps may not be the protection you need. And she's cutting 3 to 8 inch things. So I really think look at some cordless and see, and then like compare how heavy they are to the gas. And then it depends, like, are you going to go do a marathon day of cutting, or do you want something you're carrying around and cutting this and that every day, a little bit here, a little bit there? I prefer a little bit here, a little bit there, rather than a whole day of clearing personally.
Yeah. I mean, I had a Steel MS 170.
Yeah.
And I had a 14-inch bar on that.
Yeah.
And that was very light, very maneuverable. I really liked it until it disappeared.
Oh, is that the one that was stolen?
I think that's the one that was stolen.
Yeah, we had somebody steal his chainsaw here. It was kind of weird. That's all they stole that we're aware of.
Yes.
But I think it was just a crime of opportunity, and it was sitting out kind of where you could see it from the road. Okay, so you've got the firewood cut. You've split it with an axe or a log splitter. How do you store it so that you're not going to be hating your life with wet wood on December 29th when it's raining and sleeting and cold AF in your house?
You can store it if you're real lazy. Just toss it in a pile. I do not recommend that at all.
Why?
It won't dry.
Yeah.
And it looks ugly. And it's a pain in the butt to get wood out of there.
Yeah. especially if it's wet and it freezes to itself.
Yes.
Yes, it will do that. You'll end up with wood ice.
Yeah. So I like to stack it in neat rows, either 1 or 2 rows deep. Stacking it somewhere you want to, when you do it, you want to have it have good sunlight, good breeze through there. So if you have like a windy part of the yard,
put it in the windy part of your yard.
In the windy part of the yard.
You want to be able to back up your trailer to it.
Back up your trailer to it.
Otherwise, you're hand hucking it every time you move it.
But wheelbarrow wagon works great for that too.
Yeah.
Where's it going with this?
If you have a wood stove like mine, it's actually a good idea to have a wood shed. The problem with the wood shed is it attracts rodents and bugs, and so you do not want the wood shed attached to your house. Okay, so like a separate structure is better. And like when I was a kid growing up, we had a wood pile, wood shed thing, and that's where all the most amazing spiders were. But if it's covered, what will happen is that it doesn't get wet every time it rains, and you end up dropping to that 20% level in about a year. It takes about a year.
For most woods, yes.
Yeah, which is why I'm buying wood this week, because I need seasoned wood. And seasoned wood is supposed to have been dried. A lot of people advertise seasoned wood that isn't seasoned, so you kind of have to learn how to look at it. It changes color from normal wood. Green wood is bad for me.
But really, the only way to determine if it's dry enough is you have to split it open.
Yeah, and look.
But they sell moisture meters.
Okay.
But you can pretty much stab it, and it will.
Everybody listening to this podcast knows that Nicole is not going to go use a moisture meter on her wood, right? The other way you can tell is you put it in your wood stove and it doesn't burn. That means it's green.
I was trying to avoid that.
Have you seen me do that?
No.
Yes.
Do you own one? No.
Yes.
You do own one?
Do you own what? A wood stove?
Moisture meter.
No, you've seen me put it in the stove and it doesn't burn. I get all pissed off.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's storage. You want to have it covered. The way they recommend at the firewood store, if you don't have a shed, is between 2 T-posts, and then you put a tarp just over the top, but the sides still get rained on and stuff for a year. And then before you're going to use it, you bring it under cover so that external.
Tarp, or if you have some metal roofing.
Yeah, that blows all over your yard once you have windstorms. Yeah, it's a great idea.
You have to put a couple pieces on top to weight it down so it doesn't move.
Or cinder blocks, depending on how windy it is. Yes. Yeah. I think a lot of that is pretty much dependent on your climate too. Because if you're getting a lot of snow, you definitely want it in the shed. Yeah. Because if it's out in stacks under a foot of snow, you have wood ice that's hard to get because it'll get wet, it will freeze together, and then you have to get that under cover. It has to melt, and then it has to dry.
Yes.
And that's no fun.
Yes. One other thing that I've seen, I can't do it here because I don't have the equipment to move it around.
Yeah.
But people have taken the IBC totes.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
They take out the plastic container in there.
We need a forklift in the hauler.
Put all the wood in the middle cage, and then either use a tractor or a skid steer with forks on it, and then just move it around to where they need it.
Yeah, that's what Curtis Stone said he was doing. Forklift is all you need, or a fork attachment, and you can just move it up close to your house when you need it, and then it's staying dry. You're not having as many pest problems. I love that idea if we had a forklift.
Yes.
When are you going to buy me a forklift, Nighthawk?
I'm not buying a forklift.
I'm
buying a skid steer.
I'm going to get a skid steer.
Yeah.
Okay,
much more fun than a forklift.
You're right.
More useful.
I need a forklift for the coffee, though.
You put forks on that. Put forks on the skid steer. It will work too.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you got the firewood stored properly. Can you store too much?
Usually no. The only way you can,
there is never enough firewood in this world.
Yeah. The only way you can store too much.
Nicole's law of life #1.
Yeah. The only way you can store too much is if it ends up rotting before you get around to using it.
How do you keep it from rotting, Nighthawk?
You use it and you don't cut that much.
Well, or you store it so it's not getting contact with the ground or wet.
Yes.
Like it actually doesn't rot in the shed all that quickly.
No, it doesn't.
I've seen firewood that was 50 years old in the shed, and it was fun. It was very dry. It was great. Yeah. It catches on fire like that.
Yep. They just need more sheds.
Okay.
Store everything.
Cool. So, any last words of advice to people who are thinking about heating with wood or who already do that might make their lives better?
Just go out and try it.
Go out and give her a go and see if you like it. If you're really not sure what to do, go to a friend's house that has a wood stove and light a fire and see how that works for you.
Yes.
Because I think just like slaughtering a chicken before you raise chickens, like the cool thing about the chicken processing workshop is a bunch of people came out, most of whom, but not all of whom, had not processed chickens before, thinking about doing meat birds next year. So they took the class this year to see if they could do that part of it. And then they took their chickens home. And a lot of them were like, yeah, now I know I can do it. So I'm a lot more confident about bringing, 30 birds onto my property without ending up with 30 pets. Same with the wood stove. Go try to heat with one. If somebody says, can you house sit? I heat with wood, house sit for them. And you'll see what it's like to have to put the 2 a.m. log on your stove, right?
I don't do that.
He doesn't.
I just wake up and the house is a lot colder.
Yeah, he's like, ooh, there's ice in my water drinking glass by the bed. I'm not that way. I really like to have a warm house. Okay, so if people want to find out more about you or maybe hire you to do handyman projects, how do they do that, Nighthawk?
Okay, I'll back up real quick. Also, not only go over there and help them light the stove and run it, but go over and ask them to help cut the wood, split the wood, stack the wood. They'll be more than willing to let you do that. And that will give you I will give you a better feel of the overall.
Anybody who wants to come chop wood
into-
here, just hit me up, man. We have
You're
a wood
welcome.
splitter though. So
You're all more than welcome to come.
okay, how do they find you?
They find me, I have at sirhandy.net. That's the website for my handyman
Sir
business.
Handy, that's his .net website. What else?
.net. I am on the MeWe in the chat group. I'm not on Facebook. Don't like Facebook.
Okay. Yeah, he's got an attitude, so you can tell about Facebook. Anyway, well, thanks for being on the show today.
Yep. Okay.
I've stopped the recording, but we're still live. Guys, any questions before we sign off? I'm going to get this produced and out and on the road by noon today to return some very important event tables to friend in Murfreesboro. I'm not seeing any questions, so thanks for joining us on YouTube. And yeah, I thought we were originally going to do this interview like a year ago, and then it was almost the end of winter, and we still hadn't done it. So I'm glad we got it done before fire season.
Yeah.
Although you said your dad already had a fire.
Dad already had a fire.
I think I might have my first one next week, which is about 4 weeks early for Tennessee, but we'll see. We'll see how cold my house is. I might not be here, actually. I might be picking up the roaster, which means no fire.
I'm not lighting a fire.
Unless you light a fire. Okay. Thanks for being on.